Hey everybody, I'm Leslie Shepard. I'm your MNA labor rep, and we're hopping on tonight to do a little bit of training for officers and for grievances. So I am going to share my screen, and we're just going to go ahead and get started. So everybody should be able to see. I'm going to be popping in and out of share screen so that I can bring up whatever videos or clips or paperwork that we need to look at. But we're going to start with this PowerPoint presentation about union leadership. Perhaps it will launch. There we go. I'm not sure which screen you guys are seeing, but we'll make it through. So union leadership, Robin and I put this presentation together with a collaborative effort with the whole labor department. So if you guys have questions, feel free to ask. I should be able to answer all of them, and any that I can't, I will definitely get back to you on. So a little bit of history about MNA for those who don't know. MNA was originally formed in 1912 as a professional organization for nursing practice standard education. And it wasn't until 1969 that nurses in Montana gained the rights to collectively bargain through the Blue-Eyed Nurses Bill. That bill was spearheaded by a registered nurse named Mary Munger, and she actually remained an MNA member up through her entire life. She just passed a couple of years ago, I think in 2019, and was up until she got ill, was having lunch with the CEO of MNA, telling her, giving her tidbits of direction of how MNA needs to be run and the things we should be doing, which I think is pretty cool. Now MNA is a union. We're a professional association, and we are an award-winning provider of professional development, serving 38 states and 3 different countries through a professional development arm, which kind of does all of our continuing education. So right now we represent 31 local bargaining units. The funny thing is our newest unit is the Rocky Mountain Clinic in Butte. Those nurses voted to organize maybe 2 years ago, a year at least, maybe 2 years ago. And their facility fought it so hard that it had to go up through the DC district courts. They fought it tooth and nail, and we just got the results of that this week, that we won our case, and those nurses now get to begin bargaining, and they've waited for 2 years. So it's pretty exciting for them. I want you guys to watch this. So I'm going to pull up these videos really quick. Let's do this one. And this one. Can you guys see the YouTube video? Okay, I'm going to see if we can make the sound work.
Montana Nurses Association, as well as other state nurses associations around the country, is a professional association of registered nurses. Our focus in all of our states is improving the practice of nursing and improving patient care.
For 32 years, I've been a registered nurse. All 32 years, I've been a part of Montana Nurses Association.
Because it's my profession, and to care for people and to care for them well, you need to continue your education.
You need to know what's current in nursing, and that's how I stay current in nursing across the board.
I would say get involved, because it's very much an opportunity to get to know other nurses around the state, to be involved in your professional organization, to learn more about the issues for nursing, as well as they provide, again, great continuing education, great professional development.
Statewide, local, down to your little community hospital, any education that you need.
With my fellow nurses, I think that when you have a voice and people listen, then you're kind of propelled into a leadership role. And then with that leadership role, you can rally the troops and, get people together and realize, when we come together, we're greater. There's, greatness is great when you have numbers. So one person can talk, but when you have numerous people, it's more powerful.
MNA has afforded me opportunities for growth, development, professional development, leadership opportunities that I would have never, ever had I not engaged in my professional organization.
It is extremely important for all nurses to understand, especially if you're just getting out of school or if you're in the middle of your career or any time, is that Montana Nurses Association is the voice of nursing in Montana.
Many states have 20, 30,000, and we only have about 600. So to have a place where we can come and always meet, be connected.
But if I have a question or an issue with something that maybe is outside of my field, I've met so many other nurses from different fields that I know this nurse that works here that I can maybe talk to about this. There's a place in the professional association for you to learn, to grow, to network, to contribute, and to be part of this powerful interprofessional team that's improving patient care.
And then I'm going to share one other. Did you guys hear that okay? Yeah, okay. And can you see this other video? Alicia, you're the only person I can see, so. Awesome. This one is specifically about the union arm of MNA. So all of the nurses in this video are MNA nurses.
So I was raised in a union family. All I know is union.
I know, it's really hard to answer that.
I'm a part of the union because I believe that it's our voice and it's our chance.
If you're wondering what the union does for you,
Workers' rights.
Patient safety. Support.
Bringing order to chaos. Better wages.
Protecting my job.
Holidays.
There's power in numbers.
Fairer treatment.
Mentoring our student nurses.
And the power behind a common goal of a number of people.
How empowered we all are is when we come together as a group.
Patient care conditions.
pay,
Unity.
Patient care.
Workplace protections.
Nurse safety.
Nurse ratios.
Collaboration.
or short-term disability,
Patient safety.
Safety.
Patient safety. And what the nurses think that they need to be the best nurses and provide the best care.
Better outcomes.
I find that working for a union is really helpful because it makes me feel like it's more cohesive with my coworkers.
I have only ever worked as a union nurse.
Well, I'm just realizing how important the union is to me.
We're all on this big team together.
Actually, in the year and a half that I've been here, there have been a lot of situations that just realizing during this conference that I could have utilized the union.
It's just nice to know that you have backup for any situation that may arise.
And I think that the new nurses need to realize that the union is them. It's for them, it's by them, it's all about them.
It's definitely worthwhile, it's empowering, it's necessary. Coming from a hospital that wasn't unionized to a hospital that is unionized, it's complete 180, having that support behind you, knowing that there's always someone else that can help fight for you.
I am the union. You are the union. We are the union.
We are the union.
We are the union and we advocate for ourselves and each other.
We work together.
We stand together.
We're trying to make an excellent place to not only work, but to deliver really amazing quality care.
We get to be a bigger voice.
I'm proud to be a part of the union because the union is just like family, just like us.
So those are a couple of videos that our nurses put together during convention and during one of the last labor retreats we did at Chico. So here is our slideshow again. So our labor staff is Robin Hauks, who's the labor program director. She is my direct supervisor, and currently we have 2 labor reps, which me, Leslie Shepard out of Kalispell, and Amy Hochschild out of Billings. We do have 1 labor rep position posted that we're hoping to fill very soon. Our bargaining arm, collective bargaining arm, is governed by an elected union council called the Economic and General Welfare Council. There are 5 elected nurses who are responsible for guiding the MNA labor program. Nominations occur every year at convention and elections occur a few weeks after that. Duties include like the grievance arbitration review panel and they manage the collective bargaining mobilization fund. So they get to decide how we spend union money when it comes to if a grievance is worthy of going to arbitration, which costs quite a bit of money. So they get to govern that and make those decisions. And we already watched the union video, so we'll skip over this one. So the biggest thing about being a union leader, whether a unit rep or a president or anywhere in between, is not to freak out. You're never alone. You have a team of nurses beside you, and you always have somebody from MNA to help walk you through whatever is going on, whether that's me, or if you guys can't get a hold of me, there's always someone at the office that's available. Vicki has helped on grievances. Robin does grievances. Amy does as well. They can all answer questions. If they don't know a specific answer to a contract question, they can find it. So if you guys ever have a situation, you never hesitate to reach out to us if you need input, because you really are never alone and you never should feel alone. You guys are the expert. And what we mean by this is that when it comes to your facility, you guys know when things seem off. You know what questions to ask during an investigation meeting. And for me, it takes a little bit longer to get to that point because I don't work with you. I've never worked at St. Patrick's Hospital. I've never been a Providence employee. So there are things in your system, in your facility, you guys automatically know that I have to ask maybe 5 or 6 questions to get there when you already know the answer. So you guys are really the expert in your facility, and you can't mess anything up. When you're sitting in a meeting, when you're representing a nurse, it's very difficult to do anything that's catastrophically wrong that's going to mess anything up. And you're never alone, because typically in any meeting, there's always another nurse there and or me or another labor rep. So you guys won't ever have to do any of these things alone until you're comfortable doing them alone. Tools for being a union leader. Knowing your union contract is definitely the #1 rule. I have never once ever expected a nurse to memorize their contract and know it inside, outside, upside, downside, and backwards. But your contract is going to be what guides how your union functions along with your bylaws. So if there's a question on if a nurse is being treated fairly or not, the first thing I look at is the contract. And that's with every facility that I work in. I don't have the contracts memorized. I have like 11 different facilities I work with. I can't memorize that many contracts. So if there's ever a question, reference your contract, use it. Make tabs, put notes in there, highlight sections. It's really yours to utilize as a tool. The next piece is your bylaws, which I sent to you guys, copies of those if you hadn't seen them before. They were last, I think, redone in 2019, if I'm remembering correctly, which is fairly recent for bylaws update. These are the rules that govern your specific local, not the rules that govern how you and management interact, but how your union functions. So they identify who the officers are. How many officers are there going to be? How many people are on the bargaining team? How do people file a grievance? Is there any notes in there about that? How do we hold meetings and elections and all the details of how the mechanics of your union function? One thing we like to suggest officers have is having a list of MNA and local events. So what we've done in several locals is to schedule and plan meetings ahead of time. So if you're going to have regular local meetings, which I encourage all of our unions to do, having those on the same day every month, like PCC functions. So like the 3rd Wednesday of every month, we know that we're having a meeting, whether it's in person or virtual, and it's consistent so that nurses can plan on being there or plan on getting you information that they want discussed before the meeting happens. And then you can have the ability to print out an entire list of all the dates of the meetings and post those up on the bulletin board. So they always know, when is the April meeting? Oh, let's look at the list. That's when it is. So that's something that you guys can work on together if you want to do that. But it definitely helps if you can have them regularly and they're at the same expected location, the same expected, if you're using a Zoom account, something like that, it really helps. As a union leader, and this is as a rep, as an officer, myself included, be aware of both the National Labor Relations Board and the Montana Department of Labor. You don't need to know a whole lot about them other than that they exist, and that sometimes we have to go to these different departments to find answers to our questions. So the National Labor Relations Board enforces the National Labor Relations Act. which governs how unions function and how they form, how they dissolve, a lot of different things. So we reference them a lot when we're looking at issues. And the same thing with the Montana Department of Labor to make sure everything is falling within state guidelines. You guys don't need to know or be an expert about either of these. That's kind of my job. But know that these are things that I reference and look at. And so you can take time to be familiar with them as well. So bylaws and leadership positions. I'm curious, and you guys feel free to unmute yourself if you want, or even raise hands, like how many of you have looked at or are familiar with the bylaws? I'm going to scroll through videos here to see. Katie, how about you?
Not very well. I mean, I know some of them that we've adjusted, but not really very well.
Okay.
I don't think I know them very well either, but I have looked them over and got a little familiar.
Okay. So what I think you guys might find probably most familiar about your bylaws is the elected positions, because it wasn't that long ago that we did a union election and you guys became officers. So that is probably the most familiar thing that you have with your bylaws, but there are other things in there. So I'm going to pull that up and we can just look at them, but I urge you guys to really take some time to look at those. I don't want to end the meeting. I want to share my screen. To look at those when you have time to really read them. You don't need to memorize them. There's no need to memorize them, but to be familiar with what they say will be helpful. So these are your bylaws. Can you guys see them? Okay, kind of did a weird sharing thing. So this first part just names your local, which is Local 17, and why it was established to address issues of patient care, wages, hours, working conditions by representing the membership through the process of collective bargaining. This talks about membership. It's described in the contract. Members in good standing whose dues are not delinquent shall have voting privileges. So that means that nurses who have chosen to not be a member or are not paying dues, they don't have the right to vote. And that means voting on union elections. That means voting on your contract. If we do MOU votes, those sorts of things. So a local unit officer shall attempt to attend each nursing orientation as provided in the contract. Kind of runs through this. This talks about who the officers are. Presidents, co-president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, all of whom shall be members. It outlines what those are, what their duties are, the election process for the term of the contract or 3 years, whichever is less. Standing committees are the negotiating committee, which is elected, professional conference committee, which you guys do every month. Meetings are held as needed, minimum quarterly. You guys probably did not know that that was in there. Parliamentary authority. So this just talks about Robert's Rules of Order governing your meetings. Mary Carroll, who was the last union president, actually purchased a copy of Robert's Rules of Order and put it with union stuff. So I'm not sure where that went, but you guys, if you're interested in looking through it and reading it, there should be a copy available to the officers or the unit reps. This talks about how you can amend the bylaws. Dues, reimbursement of expenses, dissolution. So this talk governs like if the union were to dissolve, what that process would be as far as the officers are concerned and any money that the union has. But that's it. It's a couple of pages. It's 4 pages and kind of goes through all the things about governing this local. I'm going to stop this. There's a lot of stopping and starting with this presentation. Okay. Onward. So read your bylaws. Right now, you guys have co-president, 2 co-presidents, vice president, secretary, treasurer, and a media officer. But there are a lot of other titles that different facilities utilize, that different unions utilize. So you can really, with updated bylaws, you can really make the roles of officers be whatever they need to for your union. You can get really creative with it, or you can go bare bones. We have some locals that have 2 co-presidents and that's it, and they share all the duties. So it's really dependent on what you as a local want to do with your leadership. This is starting to go into the duties of your officers. So we're going to kind of take a little bit of time with these slides. So presidents, vice presidents, and co-presidents, you guys are responsible for carrying out policies established by the bylaws by the nurse members. You can delegate authority to anybody within the elected leadership, but not the responsibilities of being president. Duties include, and this is general, it's very specific in your bylaws, this is general duties that presidents have. Identifying broad agenda items for surveys, meetings, PCC, mentor and support less experienced nurses to help educate them on union representation, negotiate and help enforce the contract, assist with nurse member lists and maintenance, create and maintain open communication with unit reps and union leaders, assist in effective internal communication, assist and maintain the new nurse outreach program or new hire orientation, oversee local meetings. There's a lot of stuff in here. The treasurer has a direct fiduciary responsibility for managing the local unit bank account and its expenditures honestly. Treasurer's duties may include maintaining the possession of the checkbook and bank records, serve as any co-signatory with the president on all financial instruments and checks, filling the necessary LM reports with the Department of Labor if required, reporting at membership meetings, and making information available to all members regarding the financial situation of the union. Secretary, Communications Officer, Media Officer. Responsible for taking minutes, notes that record actions of the membership and any executive board meetings, and that would be officer meetings. At meetings, the secretary should provide access to minutes from the previous meetings, report on any official correspondence, and then assist in creating membership lists and communication with members. This is a bigger job than what these 3 bullet points say, which is why there's a lot of facilities that have both a secretary and a communications or media officer, because communications do take a lot of time if you're doing them regularly. The best thing about being in a leadership position, especially with your guys' local, is how many leaders you have elected, plus all of your unit reps. You guys have a lot of bodies here that can really be effective when you're trying to do a lot of things. And so there's a list of things that the officers do on the regular. And as the unit reps, you guys can help assist with those as you have time for or interested in. As officers and unit reps, do you want to lead new hire orientation? Are you interested in talking with new nurses about the union or participating in PCC or the application process or serve on the bargaining team or be a CBA delegate? You can do any of these things regardless of what your title is. You can take on what you're interested in and kind of make your role as a leader your own. And that's what makes this really interesting is if you're taking care of your duties, which all of you have been, you can participate in all of these things, any of these things that you're interested in, even at the national level, participating in union activities. So there's a lot that you can do, and you have the ability to be fluid in that role. So typically we take a 5-minute breakout session to kind of have you guys think of, as far as officers and unit reps are concerned, what are some things that you would be interested in starting to work on or kind of claiming and making your own? So I want you guys to each take a few minutes to kind of think about that, and you can write it down if you want to, but I'm going to ask a couple of you to share, an idea of something you would like to really start doing or be involved in. I'm going to give you guys like 2 minutes, okay? Okay, does anybody have thoughts on something they'd like to, work on and be that they're interested in?
I got one.
Cool.
I think we really need to work on like better communication with, the members. I can't count the times that like we've been talking like on the floor and people are like, what does the union, do for me? I'm spending, X amount a year, and some of them are questions like, what is, the worth of it? And, to like go back and explain to them that's like, well, we have, guaranteed raises, better staffing protocols in a lot of places. Through just our collective bargaining power, where it's not me versus, someone else trying to get a dollar raise or something that way. And, the safety just for patients, where we're not having to take 10 patients at night like other hospitals in the region.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up, Tyler, because I think that a lot of times we need just to get more people engaged, period. And at one point, I wanted to do a survey that I'll still work with Leslie on now that COVID's over. But I think you absolutely are right. That takes a lot of us.
Yeah,
and it's
no, I agree, Tyler, and I'll piggyback off of it as well. Like, I feel like, I'm working on getting some info out a little more consistently to people, but just since the engagement is so poor, people aren't seeing what I'm sending out to begin with. And I feel like I also field a lot of questions about, what are we doing? Why are we doing this? When did this happen? It's like, oh, well, like I sent that out, and they're like, oh, in an email. It's like, yeah, you got to check your junk mail, that kind of stuff. So I do think, improving the engagement will help a lot with answering those questions.
I agree. And I think, currently, Katie and Alicia, you guys have a plan to do some recorded videos, like educational videos that'll be short and sweet. It's really hard to engage a large group of people, and that takes finesse and consistency and time and energy. So I think that the interesting thing is that with all of the officers and unit reps that you guys have, potentially putting together like a communication strategy or a communication plan where it's not just one person or two people doing a lot of the communicating, but it's shared amongst the group, might make it more effective and less burdensome. I see somebody asked a question that, no worries, Kate, we can't even hear it.
I think that if we can do some regular meetings too, hopefully that's going to help and get that, just like Leslie had said, get it laid out to where we're doing these meetings every month. Even if we're only getting 10 people a month, if they're different people, it still gets word of the mouth out.
Yeah, Kate says that she agrees. She has a lot of people asking why we're a union. And that is a hard question to answer. It really is, because a lot of people say, well, why am I paying all this? What am I getting out of it? And the union is not something, any union, not just yours, it's not just like a fee for service, like your cable bill where you pay for cable and you get the service. It is collaboration and working together and building power and numbers to get big wins at the negotiating table, to enforce the contract, to make sure that there's fairness and equity. It's not a fee for service. It's a group of people combining their money together to make big change. And it still takes effort from the people who are paying. And you guys see that, you know that.
And I like to also point out to people, like, because especially we just went through that COVID situation, and we saw what happened to some of those Western Montana clinic nurses getting laid off. And our union helped make sure when we had absolutely no patients for months that they weren't laying off people, so there's a protection element on top of having the strength in negotiating power as well, because they have to follow rules with us. So
exactly. So let's keep going. So tickets to success is communication, which you guys just mentioned. You guys are right on topic here. So one-on-one conversations with your nurses are tedious and time-consuming, but the most effective way to hear what they're saying and address their concerns. Especially when you have as many nurses as you guys do, it's time-consuming and hard, but it is one very effective method. Unit councils, PCC, and local meetings, You guys are doing a lot of those things already, but knowing that you can improve the regularity of your local meetings and potentially the turnout of those meetings. Conference calls are something that can be utilized, emails, social media, texting, flyers. When it comes to meetings, there are a lot of interesting strategies on very quick meetings, like a 10-minute meeting. And you'd be amazed at how many people will call into a 10-minute meeting knowing that it's 10 minutes long. It's not going to suck up an hour of their time. And if it's a phone call or a Zoom, they don't have to go anywhere to the meeting. So it's pretty impressive how quickly you can get an increase in turnout if you're doing regular short meetings instead of infrequent long meetings. Good for that. So, oh, hello. 5-minute breakout session on how you're going to communicate. I think that you guys have already talked about this. And I think as a local, you guys are really doing a great job at trying to be open and communicate with your membership. You guys have regular PCC meetings, and those minutes are not only posted internally on the intranet, right? But you guys are sending them out to your membership. So that's twice that they're getting that communication, which is fantastic. You have an Instagram and a Facebook page. Some of our locals don't have either. You have an email account that you're keeping your emails updated, and you are sending out emails regularly. Email is probably not the best way to communicate because, like Alicia said, like it goes in your junk mail. People don't check their email account for weeks on end, but you're making the attempt, and there's never one way that's going to work for everybody. And so the best way, in my opinion, is a shotgun approach where you try to do it in as many forms as possible. And I think you guys are doing that. There's always room for improvement, but I think you're doing a pretty good job at trying to communicate with members. But if you have great ideas, I see your hand, Alicia. If you guys have great ideas on how to better reach them, like I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, I was just going to say, especially since we have a handful of unit reps on with us, I was just wondering if anybody had suggestions about how to improve communication between like officers and reps, like floor nurses and reps to officers, just because and I feel like people have been reaching out a little bit more via like phone and email, but I just want to know if there's anything that can be improved. I also want to mention that I'm considering building a website where we can just have all of this information, like the videos about like ADOs, grievances, purpose of the union, recorded and available, so that people can have like a solid place of reference should they need it. You know, I just feel like our resources are very difficult to access, and I just want to kind of remove that barrier as much as I can.
I think that you saying that the resources are difficult to access and you want to remove that barrier is probably one of the best things I've heard an officer say about trying to reach their membership. And I don't know if a website's the best way to do it because I've never run a website before. But I love the idea. I absolutely love the idea. What do you guys think? Sarah loves the website idea. So does Kate. So,
I absolutely love the website idea. And then the one other thing I thought of while we're trying to get people engaged prior to negotiations as well is when we were doing negotiations, I know a couple of us on the team that negotiated went out and did rounds, like coffee rounds and stuff to the hospital. And I think that actually had a pretty positive impact. And I know that this is super time consuming. Trust me, it was during negotiations as well. But I think maybe going forward, maybe planning that for next year, like, you know, slowly 1 or 2 a year to try to do that might not be a bad idea either. I don't know what our financial situation looks like because I know the union paid for that, but that might be something we need to think about doing.
I like that idea. Tyler likes the website. And Katie, you have to go to work. Oh, bummer. Sorry.
I like the idea of the coffee rounds. I had actually been thinking about that. I'm glad you brought that up because it was kind of an idea that, you know, was in my brain and then disappeared. But I was thinking about how it would be nice to just like have a set time, like once or twice a month, where at least like one officer kind of like walks around the floor like during the day and then during the evening to check in with like day shift and night shift and see if anything's going on. And I'd be happy.
In my opinion, it's a lot easier for 2 because they might not recognize one of us, but most people on the unit would recognize, you know what I mean, one of 2 of us.
Mm-hmm.
So,
You guys can
but I
wear
would,
really big, embarrassing shirts that say like union officer on them.
A vest.
A vest, yes. A sash. Sorry.
a bright green one to support St. Pat's, right?
I dig it. I dig it. So you guys have some good ideas started. I think that like the more we talk about how do we reach the members, the more you're going to come up with ideas. And honestly, when you guys as reps or officers have these nurses coming up saying, hey, what about this? When did this come from? Oh, I didn't see the email. Like asking them the question, like how is it best to reach you? Like we're trying, what is going to be the easiest? And I think that might give some great ideas. It's hard to say, but sometimes nurses have the best ideas on how to solve problems. Okay, so how do we learn more as we're working as union officers? So the first thing I would say, oh, I got a message up here, hang on. Website's awesome, Rachel says, absolutely. So the best way to get more information is to ask for trainings from me or attend labor retreat, which we're now calling advocacy retreat. It happens every year, end of April, beginning of May. This year we're doing it virtually. It's $50. You get 6 contact hours for continuing education for nurses. We're talking about things like grievances, just cause, nurse advocacy, assignment despite objection. There's a whole agenda you guys can check out on the website if you want to. Convention is great education as well, though it's not union specific education or even about like promoting union leadership. It's nursing education, but it's fantastic nursing education. We have a lot of national union events through the AFT. So if you get engaged at the state level and get elected to represent MNA to the national union, you get to travel to wherever their conventions are, their training stuff is. The travel's been a little weird since COVID, but things are getting back to normal. And so I think they're going to be opening things back up at some point. And it was all on MNA's dime, the travel, the hotel, everything. You know, we paid for nurses to represent MNA at these national things. And as you get engaged, the more you learn and the stronger your ability to advocate becomes. Oh, hey, there it is. The more involved you are, the more you learn. Can you tell I made this presentation? You guys are the expert in your workplace. Request education from me, grievance training, crucial conversations, the structure of MNA. If we don't have the education to meet your needs, we can build it, and we will work on that. So that's the end of this first one. We're going to take a quick break because I have a little child who just walked into my office past her bedtime, and I'll be right back.
Alicia, are you there?
Yeah.
So I think that we could talk about that coffee round and possibly get a flyer out. Like once we decide to do a date, like and whoever else is here that wants to chime in and like maybe do 2. Like we could start off with a month and see what our turnout is, and then like we could have 2 people do the day shift round, people do the night shift round, and kind of let people know like if you guys have questions, like we'll be around or whatever. Even advertise that, but then we can go grab coffee. I know Casey's got to be involved in helping us plan some of that. We just grab coffee usually from whatever vendor we can. Like I hate doing Starbucks because we all have Starbucks.
Yeah.
Like we don't want to do that, but I think it did a decent job during negotiations to help kind of people know that we were out there. So we can just look at planning one of those and see how that goes. I think that'd be a great idea.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to start doing that. I'm happy to help.
Yeah, we'll just have to start looking at different times.
Okay.
And availability, because that's always easy. Okay, go ahead. You're back.
Sorry, no, I'm back. Although there's some yelling happening upstairs, that's fine. Just pretend like it's not happening. So do you guys have any questions before we move into the grievance portion? No. Alicia,
I just want to make sure I didn't like zone out, but we talked a lot about like the officer responsibility specifically, but did we for the reps that are here, talk about what we expect of them?
No, but I think that is something that you guys determine within your local.
Okay.
And so I think if you guys have the ability to share that information right now, please do. Like take a little bit of time and tell them what you feel like you expect as the officers from your unit reps, or what you need help with, or whatever you guys have decided upon already.
Okay.
And if you're not ready, that's
I
something
can go first just from my portion. I mean, for me as the media coordinator, what's going to be easiest for me is knowing and getting feedback on what is working in terms of communication and what isn't, just because it's kind of hard for me to, we've got a huge age range of nurses. So some people prefer email, some people prefer the social media, and some people don't have social media at all. So just like some feedback and communication about like how people would prefer to be reached would be super helpful for me.
Anybody else have anything to add?
Yeah, I wanted to share, I like this idea of the union officers doing rounds on the floor, but really our reps are our boots on the ground. And like, as the officers, in theory, we wouldn't need to go do rounds on the floor and bring people coffee, because we have our reps there hearing what's going on and what concerns there are, and answering questions that our membership has. And then feeding whatever information, if there's major concerns that they want the officer team to bring up. Like that's the idea, right? So it's like the web. We have a web going down, and some of us work the floor, and we hear that sort of thing.
That being said, Alicia, for things that work, like emails work, but they can be like alarms. It's like fatigue and overload, and you just see them all. But it was like, I feel like if the unit reps maybe got like one specific email from the officers, like meeting minutes, like this one actually has like what's new and updated instead of like the general everything, I would like pay attention to that email. It's like when I get a scheduling email, I pay attention to the word schedule. Like if I saw officer minutes or something, I would like read it, and then I would just, update everyone on my unit as to like what I had just read.
Okay.
Like that.
Yeah, I know Leslie and I had kind of talked about that off the bat, because I felt like that was an issue in terms of like email fatigue. Like we get people unsubscribing pretty frequently just because they don't, because we get the ones from the overall MNA branch too. And it is a lot. And I don't want to be like harassing people's inboxes, but but it is kind of like, yeah. Okay, so are you saying like maybe, or did I hear that wrong? Like maybe one that kind of goes to like reps, and then we can let
us do the talking, so you guys don't have to go to the floors. Like if you sent like a short list of emails to just the unit reps with like highlighted details of like new changes, new issues, new advocations or something like that, then I could be like, hey, we're doing this. Hey, we're dealing with this. Like I could highlight whatever your bullet points are, and I would like look for a specific email being like, ooh, those are my points to like blab to everybody.
Okay. I like that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of like talking points for all the unit reps, so that they know how to answer that question of like, what is the union doing? Yeah, I see you nodding. Okay, cool. Anybody else? Okay. If you think of something, pop in and interrupt. I'm going to start the grievance training. This one's a little bit shorter because some of the intro slides are the same. So this is nurse advocacy and resolution training. Grievances at their base, stripped down, is really nurses advocating for what has been agreed to in the contract or what policy states. So it's just advocating for fairness and equality and holding people to contract standards. So the history of MNA, I'm not going to read to you guys again, and I'm not going to show you the same videos again or introduce you to myself again. We'll just skip through the ENGW Council as well. Start with Weingarten rights. So For those of you that don't know or haven't heard the term Weingarten rights, Weingarten rights are something that once employees form a union and vote yes on their union election, they get automatically. It is an automatic right for every union nurse, employee, member, or non-member. If you function underneath a collective bargaining agreement, you have Weingarten rights. What Weingarten rights are is the ability to have union representation in any meeting that could lead to a nurse being disciplined or any meeting that is investigatory in nature. So this kind of image here is a little card that we used to print out and give to all the nurses that on one side has this Weingarten rights. If this discussion could in any way lead to my being disciplined or terminated or affect my personal working conditions, I respectfully request that my union representative, officer, or steward be present at this meeting. Until my representative arrives, I choose not to participate in this discussion. The other side shows you some things. When your employer notifies you of a meeting, immediately ask your supervisor or manager, what is the purpose of the meeting? Is the meeting investigatory? Will I be asked questions which may possibly lead to discipline? Will I be asked questions to require me to defend my conduct? If answer to any of those questions are yes, then you have the right to have a union rep present. If the meeting is investigatory or answers may lead to discipline, respectfully inform your employer that you're invoking your Weingarten rights and will need to have your union rep present during questioning, and quickly arrange for your union representative to attend the meeting. This is a piece, the quickly arrange piece is something that is most of the time done at St. Patrick's Hospital with your nurses, but not always. There's been times when I've gotten reached out to from HR saying, hey, this nurse has asked for union representation and doesn't know where to go to get it, doesn't know who to ask. They aren't having any luck finding anyone. And when I dig into it, it's because they didn't ask anybody because they didn't know who to go to. So this is important because having a rep with you feels a little bit like evening the playing field. If you guys have noticed or been in any meeting with management, it's never just one person. They always have at least two and sometimes more. And that is for a couple of reasons. One is that while one person is talking, the other person can take notes and observe. Having two people allows for them to have a witness and a participant. And that's kind of some of the reasons why we want union representation as well. Another set of ears to listen. You guys know that when we're talking to our patients about something really stressful and scary, they don't always hear everything we say. And the same thing happens when a nurse feels like they're being disciplined or having to defend their conduct. They don't always pick up on all the little tiny details. So it's always good to have a second set of ears. The other piece here is that our role in providing representation really has to do with making sure that a nurse's rights aren't being violated. Making sure that if they get upset, that they know that they can take a break. Making sure that if somebody is saying something that just doesn't add up to you, that beyond the nurse being questioned, you have the ability to ask questions and figure out what in the world is actually going on. Let's dive a little deeper into that. The most important thing about providing representation is the same idea that you are the expert within your guys' facility. You know when things feel weird and don't add up or don't make sense, especially if you're representing a nurse who works on your department. If they're explaining a situation that completely makes sense to you and management is drilling them about the decisions they made, and they're the same decisions that you would have made, you know that there's something weird going on here. And you have the ability as the person providing representation to ask management as many questions as you want. You at that time are equal to management. There's no hierarchy for you. You're in a protected position as a union representative, and you have the ability to intervene and ask questions, to ask for a break, to take some time, to ask if a nurse is really upset, to ask if it can be rescheduled. You have the ability to advocate for what that nurse needs. And so that's an important thing for you guys to understand. You can't mess anything up. My only advice for nurses that prevents them from messing something up is if you go sit in a meeting where a nurse maybe really has done something wrong and you know it, just based on the story, you know that they made the wrong choice. I don't want you to say, I can't believe you did that. That was so stupid. You made such a big mistake. And really point out if they've done something wrong. That's not your job in this meeting. Your job is to represent them and be supportive for them, and not to, point out if they have done something wrong. If they have, that will come out in the investigation. We always encourage our nurses to be honest about everything. So let them be honest. You don't need to help them with that. So the nurse that you're supporting is going to be way more nervous than you are, way more nervous. So know that you're going in there to be that solid foundation for them, to provide them support. Most of the time, as our officers can attest to, if you are going in to provide Weingarten rights, I'm typically there too, usually virtually. It's just nice to have a warm body sitting next to those nurses who knows a little bit about the contract, who can be compassionate and sympathetic to how they're feeling and what they're going through, and who can be the eyes and ears in the room if I'm literally just on the phone, because it's really hard to pick up on body language and tone, and the audio is not always great. So there are things that you guys in the room will pick up on that I don't always get to until after the meeting. So next, providing union representation and being a nurse advocate. You're the expert and you can't mess anything up except by saying, oh my God, I can't believe you made such a big mistake, which I know you guys won't do. And that the nurse that you're supporting is more nervous than you. You're allowed to talk and ask questions during the meeting. You can ask for a break anytime. If you feel like the meeting is going in a weird direction and you want to have a one-on-one conversation with me and the nurse, we can do that at any time. Really, you guys have rights in this meeting to be vocal and to advocate for your nurses, and that's the important thing here. Have any of you accompanied a nurse and provided Weingarten rights to either investigatory or disciplinary meetings? No, Alicia?
I did a couple months ago.
Yeah,
I think, right?
I know Rachel has.
Mm-hmm.
Erin, have you?
Sorry, I was away from my phone. Yes, I have.
Yeah, Jeff has.
Jeff?
I think Aaron Jones, you may have as well too in the past. I see somebody's popping up on a chat. Not yet to Tyler. So, Alicia, Rachel, what was it like being that rep there in the room? How'd it go?
It went fine. I met with the nurse a couple of minutes early just to kind of get a grasp on the situation, because these things can kind of pop up last minute. But I do feel like it is nice for the nurse in question at the meeting to just have some support. I definitely think it helps with the nerves, and just knowing that like somebody's physically there to have your back and help ask questions that you might not be thinking to ask. So yeah, and ours, it was a pretty small issue, and it resolved pretty quickly, but still I think it was good for us to be there.
Yeah. Rachel, what about you?
Absolutely. They're very uncomfortable, and it's a very stressful situation. I think they're looking at losing their jobs, or at least that's the first thing that they think of, regardless of what the situation is, to be honest. And we're still going through this one, so I know it's been a roller coaster, and I think she appreciates the support from the union, and it's been helpful for her.
So Kate put a question in the group chat. I'm new here. Is this something any of us can be asked to do, or just officers? Honestly, Kate, anybody. You could pull a nurse in off the floor to provide union representation. It can be anybody. I prefer it to be someone who has gone through a little bit of this training if possible. But it's not common where you guys are having to provide this representation completely solo. There are some of our unions that will, the officers will go into an investigatory meeting and just handle it without a labor rep. And I would love for you guys to feel confident enough to do that. And through the length of you being officers, I think you can get there. But even as many meetings as we've had in the past, 6 months, we've had quite a few. It takes a while to get that comfort level where you feel like you know how to ask the right questions and how to provide the support. And so until you guys are feeling confident, I want to be that resource with you too. So you won't have to be doing it alone. Or Kate, for example, if one of the nurses in your department needed representation and you wanted to go, maybe it would be you and an officer going together. So there's 2 union members supporting this nurse if I can't be there on the phone. But legally, you guys can provide union representation. Any nurse that's a union member can provide union representation. It doesn't just have to be an elected officer. So when I get reached out for union representation, I send a text to our officer group saying, hey, I have a meeting at this date and this time for this nurse. Is there anybody that can be there with them? So we try to always get someone. And I don't know that we've had a meeting where we couldn't get a person there. But if we got to a point where we couldn't get an officer there, the next people we would want to reach out to is the union reps or the unit reps. So. Another question, I think. Thanks, Kate. Okay, let's keep going. Maybe. Okay, so how do we provide representation for a nurse at a discipline meeting? Number 1, meet with the nurse prior if possible, just like Alicia did. Find out if they have any idea what the topic of the discipline is. Address their fears and emotions because those will be big. And coach the nurse to be professional, to be honest, to be confident if they have it in them. It's a very stressful time. I always tell nurses to answer whatever questions are being asked, but don't give a bunch of random information or go down rabbit holes about things that aren't pertinent. Just stick to the questions that you're being asked and answer them honestly. Your role as the rep is to take good notes. Who's there, their titles, time, place, what they say, how they deliver, the tone that they're using, any body language that you notice. I've been on a phone call in a meeting where management was literally out of their chair coming over the table talking to a nurse, physically aggressive to a nurse in an investigatory meeting, to the point where we stopped the meeting and said, this is not working, we need to reschedule. And so you guys would see that in the room. I can't see that on the phone. I can maybe hear that something sounds, their voice is different, the tone is different, but that's why having a person physically in the room is so important. Ask questions. Don't interrupt, be professional, but ask whatever questions you feel are necessary. If you can't think of questions during the meeting, or maybe you think of them right after, 2 days after, a week after, we can follow up with emails anytime to ask whatever lingering questions come to mind as we discuss whatever the issue is. And you guys are the expert. You can ask for any breaks that you need. Use me as a resource. We can prepare for meetings together. You, me, and whoever the nurse is, we can do things like that. And if, Rachel, especially because we've been working through a fairly lengthy grievance process, we've had a couple of those meetings where we talk as a group like, hey, this is what I'm thinking. What are you thinking? How are you feeling? And we talk through the whole process together. So what do you do if someone approaches you with an issue or says that they want to file a grievance? Valid question, because as officers, you'll get that. And as unit reps, you guys will get that as well. So ideally, we would refer them to a resolution or a grievance officer. At this point, and Alicia, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know that we have any really identified grievance officers. Yeah, I see you shaking your head. So referring them to the officer group and me would be the best options. You look like you're going to unmute, Alicia, but I don't know if you are or not.
I wasn't, then I was just going to tape it. I don't know if Erin's still here or not, but Erin was on the list a while ago. And sorry, Erin, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but.
Oh, I see her. I see your face there. Hey, girl.
Hi. I mean, and that list was kind of the one that I created the new unit rep and grievance officer list off of, but I don't know, I never confirmed with anybody about being a grievance officer for this term. So I think
so I never officially did any grievances with anyone. Not that I wouldn't mind doing that. My life is a little hectic, but when I'm available, I can do that.
Yeah, and that's kind of how it works when we have a larger group of officers that will say, hey, we're filing a grievance. Who can tackle this? Who's got the bandwidth right now to hop in on these meetings? And we do try to schedule them on my schedule, the nurse's schedule, and the grievance officer's schedule of when all of us are available. And we've been pretty successful about being able to do that. So if we get to a point where we need more hands on deck as far as handling the grievances, Erin, we might be reaching out to you. We're doing okay right now, though.
Oh, good.
I figured I'll send it, when I email this recording out to the reps as well, once everybody's had a time to look at the recording and kind of get a better grasp of what's expected, what a grievance, process looks like. I'll ask and see who's interested. Erin, sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot and.
Oh, you're fine. I had a crying young child, so I had to go.
Okay.
Alicia, I think that when I spoke with Lori regarding that last part too, I'll reach out to her. I think Lori Erb actually said she was still interested in being a grievance officer. So I'll let you know that as well soon, because that would be helpful as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is really great having people who have been in a leadership position help as grievance officers or unit reps, just because they kind of understand the role and responsibilities that you guys are being tasked with. And so I think it really it lends itself nicely to continuing to advocate for your departments. So as the resolution or grievance officer, unit rep, whoever, your job when talking to this nurse is to ask all of the questions. Try to figure out what was going on, what they believe has been violated, what the situation is. Commit to the research, because that means you're going to be looking at your contract. We might be developing a list of questions to submit to management or human resources. We might be looking at pay stubs. Some grievances have a ton of research. So commit to being a part of that. I don't expect you guys to do all of the research in any way by yourself, but I will probably do most of it and then communicate with you all what has been found, share with you the data that I've collected, that sort of thing. Review your contract, get the nurse's personal email and cell phone number. Get back to them, respond to them, start a text thread with me. That works great. As a labor rep, whenever someone approaches you with a potential grievance, I am your resource for that, and happy to walk through the thought process of how do we determine if this is actually a contract violation or not, or a policy violation or not. Best practice is to talk about it, and talk about it as a group too, so that we're all on the same page, which is something that we're currently doing right now with the nurse who's filed a grievance. As we've had a group communication with the officers about, hey, this is what's going on. What are we all thinking? How do we proceed? What's the best foot forward here? And remember, for your facility, you guys are the experts. In your departments what's right, what's wrong, how things are supposed to roll. If low census process has been totally violated and somebody completely screwed up or not, you'll probably know that before I will. But yeah, I think having your contract available and looking into it and doing the research into your contract will help you be more familiar with your contract and specifically about whatever the grievance is. So, or potential grievance. What is a grievance? It is a violation of the contract or potential violation of the contract, a policy, a past practice, or an issue surrounding contract interpretation. The procedure for your grievance process is outlined in your collective bargaining agreement. It's typically a 3-step process, which yours is. Timelines of your grievance are crucial. Most grievance procedures that we have in MNA say that you have a 10-day window from the time a violation happens and or a time that the nurse is aware of the violation to file the grievance. If you are outside of that window, the employer does not have to recognize the grievance in any way, and the discussion could be completely void. Every step in your process has a timeline attached to it. A timeline of when a meeting has to happen, a timeline of when a response from management is due, and a timeline of when we have to accept that response or reject it and proceed to the next step. So timelines are crucial. Formal grievances are in writing, usually by step 1 or 2. We do have a grievance form. I sent that to you guys in your training packet for you to use as a resource or just to look at it, and I can pull it up if you guys want to see what it looks like. Most grievance processes, yours included, culminate in mediation or arbitration. Your steps are, I believe, direct supervisor, director, and then chief nursing officer. So Carol Benson, director of nursing, chief nursing.
Yes, yes.
Whichever her title is at this point. Things change all the time. So, and then after that, if we've gone through all 3 of these steps, had all 3 of these meetings, and the resolutions that they're proposing do not solve the grievance, we have the ability to go to mediation or arbitration. Those are two different things. Mediation is the idea of presenting a case and working with management to try and create a resolution that both the grievant and the management team can agree to. The lovely thing about mediation is that the nurse and the union have the ability to have a say in what the resolution looks like. So they can talk about if it's a financial thing, oh, they don't want to pay us all of it, but maybe 2/3, and maybe the nurse is okay with that. So it's really having the ability to have a say in what the resolution looks like. When you go to arbitration, you are quite literally presenting a case to a neutral third party, and the neutral third party makes a decision as to whether or not there was an actual violation of contract language or policy or protocol or whatever the case may be. And if there was a violation, what that remedy will be. They get to make all the decisions. There's no say from either party of, yes, it was a violation, no, it wasn't. It's really their decision after the case is presented by both attorneys. It's kind of like court. So use me as your resource when beginning to investigate a grievance, a potential grievance, an issue that comes up, and I will walk with you through the entire process. I've never, ever expected a nurse to do any of this by themselves. Some locals will get through step 1 solo, and after that loop in a labor rep. I like to be with you guys on the ground floor to make sure we're looking at as many aspects of it as possible and really doing the research, because that does take time. And if there's more than one person doing it, it really helps. So investigating grievances and the 6 W's. Who is involved? Grievant, management, witnesses. We need all their names. And sometimes we need statements from them. When did it happen? Big deal here, because that sets your timeline. You need to know when it occurred. If it's something that occurred 6 months ago, we probably aren't going to be able to do anything about it. And trust me, I've had nurses come to me with an issue that happened 6 months ago, expecting the ability to grieve it and have a resolution. And sometimes we can, if management recognize the grievance, but they have no legal obligation to recognize something that occurred so long ago. Just like it wouldn't be appropriate for them to discipline you for something that happened so long ago. Timing can also be the basis for a grievance. Pretty interesting. Where did it happen? Did it happen at work? Did it happen in the parking lot? Did it happen at the bar across the street? What happened, where it happened, who was there, when it happened? All the W's are important. So separating fact from opinion or hearsay is sometimes the hardest thing. And even if you have 20 people's statements, it's still hard to know exactly what could have happened. So what we have to do is gather documentation and supportive facts. As you guys know, when it comes to like documenting and nurses' notes and things like that, hard facts are different than observations, are different than opinions, are different than inferences. And so when it comes to grievances, if we can get hard facts that have supportive evidence, that's golden. But most of the time that's hard to do. So sometimes we're weeding through kind of this what actually happened situation, and it takes a lot of conversations to get that information. So why is this a grievance? You have to find out in the contract what article's been violated, or if it's a past practice or policy, what actually has been violated here. And so when you're putting together the grievance form, the written form, this piece gets put on that form. And then whole is the last one. What must be done to make the grievant whole? And it's kind of a weird way to ask the question of what resolves the problem? What's going to fix this? Some things can't be fixed. If just like with an ADO, if the staffing issue happened 3 weeks ago and we're just talking about it now, like you can't go back and fix that. But how do we make things right moving forward? Sometimes that's the question that we have to ask. So this remedy can be very creative, like a written apology, sensitivity training for an entire department. What's some other good ones that we've had? I've had big financial settlements come from grievances. So it's different depending on the situation, what happened, what was violated, as to how we move forward to make the situation improve, to make the grievant feel whole, like the situation has been resolved. Tips to remember: keep track of your timeline. Always keep track of your timeline. I use my calendar to set reminders as to when dates are due, like Alicia's grievance has to be filed by this date, or our step 1 response is due by this date. I use my calendar a lot for that. Gather information, take notes, look for documentations or any hard evidence that can support a claim. Use your contract to determine the validity of a grievance, because sometimes people think it's a grievance and it's not a violation of the contract. It's maybe a violation of their understanding of the contract, but that doesn't mean the contract's actually been violated. Ask questions, submit information requests to management at any time through the process. Ask your labor rep for help, use me as a resource, get help with filling out the grievance form. If you guys want to take stabs at filling them out and send them to me for review, happy to do that. I'm happy to walk you through all of it. And we have a grievance handbook that is in the final stages of being produced. So when we get that done, that will go out to all the officers that we can. It will probably be a digital version. We might print some, but it will probably be digital to start. And that will help you guys kind of navigate the process, knowing that your specific grievance process is outlined in your contracts. You always need to look at that as well. Now, I claimed this presentation would take 40 minutes, and it's surely taken longer than that. So what questions do you guys have before we call it a night?
Can I just have these PowerPoints for reference? I feel like they'd be nice to send out to the officers.
Totally. Yes. If you guys don't have questions pertaining to the grievance PowerPoints, did you find any of this helpful? See Alicia nodding. Yeah, okay. I'm going to stop this. And I'm going to say a big thank you to everybody for coming. And I'm going to stop our recording